Did you know that Sean Young once tried to land a part she was never cast in by showing up at Warner Brothers in a homemade Catwoman suit? One thing was certain, whether you call it bold or delusional. Sean Young had gone from being Hollywood's next great thing to a tabloid joke by the early 1990s. Blade Runner was launched by her. In No Way Out, she stood up against Kevin Costner. She had the potential to become a powerful figure in the field. Then it simply collapsed. Was it studio politics, bad luck, or something else entirely? Regardless of the cause, Sean Young's career took a more severe turn than anybody had anticipated, and Hollywood never really forgiven her. What the devil happened then? Let's go dark together. Mary Sean Young was born in Louisville, Kentucky, on November 20th, 1959. Her father was a journalist and TV producer. Her mother worked as a public relations professional and scriptwriter. Despite not having a conventional Hollywood upbringing, she was surrounded by stories from an early age. She studied classical ballet as a teenager at the Interlochen Arts Academy in Michigan. She was more focused on movement, timing, and accuracy back then than she was on being a movie star. It appeared that she was walking towards the stage rather than the screen. She attended the School of American Ballet in New York after graduating, but finally the allure of acting became too much to resist. In order to make ends meet, she began modeling, and soon she was getting auditions. In addition to her appearance, she exuded a confidence that came out as abrasive and erratic. Additionally, she debuted in the movie Jane Austen in Manhattan in 1980. Although it wasn't a big hit, it was enough to get her noticed, and the very next year she got a small role in a popular comedy that completely transformed her life. Stripes, released in 1981, was her first true run at the major leagues. It's one of those vintage early 1980s screwball comedies. Charming, noisy, and chaotic. Alongside Harold Ramis, John Candy, Warren Oates, Judge Reinhold, and even the youthful John Larroquette in full sleazeball form, Bill Murray spearheads the charge. This movie, which was a hit, was made by men who knew how to balance irreverence with madness. Despite having a small role, Sean Young, who plays MP Lewis Cooper opposite PJ Soles as the other love interest, manages to hold her own in a movie that is dominated by boisterous male energy. In contrast to the profanity surrounding her, she exuded a tenderness and an easy, comfortable attitude. She and Ramis had a lot of on-screen chemistry, and even in the few occasions where she appeared to be assessing the profession, you could see something flashing behind her eyes. During the romantic comedy backdrop routine, this was more than just a gorgeous face. By all accounts, Sean Young got along well with the cast, and the shoot was tight, a little sloppy at times, but full of enthusiasm. Although she wasn't yet famous, she was gaining recognition and learning. Despite having a modest budget of $10 million, the movie made nearly $85 million at the box office. It was also largely accepted by critics. Murray's deadpan charisma was commended by Roger Ebert, who described it as an engaging, raggedy comedy. Although it wasn't flawless, it didn't have to be. Stripes quickly gained popularity and eventually became a favorite among users. Despite having very little screen time, she manages to hold her own against all of these future comic giants, which is no small feat. In hindsight, Stripes marked not only a breakthrough for the men, but also the start of something for Sean Young. Blade Runner slammed the door shut if Stripes managed to get her inside. Sean Young co-starred with Harrison Ford in Ridley Scott's dystopian noir classic from 1982, which not only redefined science fiction, but also changed its aesthetic. And I'll raise my hand. This is among my all-time favorite films. In my home, it's one of those VHS tapes that hardly made it through the 1980s. It's simply captivating in every way. The Vangelis music, the lighting, the world building, the sound design. Additionally, the performances are completely out of the ordinary. I was completely taken aback to see Sean Young appear in this following Stripes. There is no way she could have been more different. The carefree appeal had vanished. Here she was reticent, methodical, and mysterious. She portrayed Rachel as someone balancing their identity on a tightrope, appearing composed on the outside but always having a vulnerable side. The performance wasn't loud or ostentatious. That was the goal, I guess. She wasn't your average Hollywood leading lady when she played Rachel. She portrayed her as someone who was struggling to keep herself together. Blade Runner was controversial and did poorly at the box office, even though it wasn't a huge hit at the time. However, Young's portrayal caught the attention of critics, and as the movie became a cult classic and one of the most admired science fiction films ever made, so did her character. However, behind the scene wasn't quite as dramatic. Young and Harrison Ford reportedly had a tense relationship on filming. Some said their relationship off-screen didn't match their on-screen chemistry. Although Ridley Scott commended her appearance and on-screen persona, there were whispers that she was, well, challenging. Although it might be challenging to distinguish between myth and reality, this was the beginning of a trend that would follow Sean Young throughout her career. You would expect that the momentum would continue after Blade Runner, and it did on paper. Sean Young agreed to work on another huge sci-fi epic in 1984, this time with David Lynch in charge. The movie, Dune, which was based on Frank Herbert's infamously complex book, had all the makings of a career-defining event. A large cast, a substantial budget, and a devoted following. In his cinematic debut, Sean portrayed Paul Atreides' Freeman love interest, Charney, who was portrayed by a youthful Carl McLaughlin. Despite having a significant role in the novel, she ended up playing a much smaller, supporting role in the movie rather than a fully realized one. I must admit that I really have a soft place for this one. This was located in that small, thriving area in the early 1980s when sci-fi producers were vying for viewers' attention. Dune was in the midst of your amazing world-building, unique tone and exquisite soundtracks. Despite Sean's lack of screen time, she left an impression. Dune simply failed to land, which was the issue. The final cut felt like a collection of lovely ideas without enough glue to tie them together. The production was chaotic, and the story was shredded during the editing process. It was criticized for being bloated, unclear, and almost unintelligible. The sci-fi audience was divided, Lynch denied it, and the studio suffered financial losses. Sean Young was a part of something grandiose but ultimately faulty once more. Even though they eventually became hits, both of her previous major sci-fi projects had failed commercially. This was the second in a row. However, things took a change, moving from space politics and sandworms to something much more grounded. This included a main role, a sleek political thriller, and an opportunity to showcase a side of Sean Young that Hollywood had not yet seen. Sean Young eventually found a part that allowed her to come out of the background in 1987. She was at the focus of a tight, suspenseful political thriller that lacked any false mystery or sci-fi world-building. She was teamed with Kevin Costner, who was about to become a big celebrity himself. In No Way Out, she portrayed Susan Atwell, a lady entangled in a lethal romantic triangle with a naval officer and a senior government official. It was the type of function where there were two possible outcomes, the cliché of the flat femme fatale or something more. Sean Young added to it. For once, she was permitted to display her range, and she and Costner had a genuine relationship. Sometimes a scenario might have turmoil, danger, vulnerability, and confidence. Her performance was highly appreciated by critics. It is a daring, seductive performance that electrifies the opening act, according to the New York Times. Audiences reacted as well. Her face was all over again after No Way Out became a box office success. This briefly appeared to be the pivotal moment, the breakthrough performance that will ultimately propel her into the next level of top actresses. When you look back on this early period of her career, you have to admit that she must have had an incredible agency because, by anyone's standards, Stripes, Blade Runner, Dune, and No Way Out is a pretty amazing run. On the surface, it appeared that Sean Young had finally made an appearance, but Hollywood has a way of turning down the volume right when you're getting comfortable, and the rumors had already begun behind closed doors. Blink and you'll miss it, but she even made a brief appearance on Wall Street, which was no small feat. Oliver Stone was riding a tide of accolades and recognition as he came off duty. The fact that Young was included in the movie, although in a supporting capacity, only served to highlight how in demand she was at the time of its release in the late 1980s. You can now buy me a coffee if you like this video and would like to support the channel. It sustains these retrospectives. This allows me to continue bringing attention to actors that Hollywood often overlooks. The link can be found in the description below. Let's toast. Let's go back to the video. Sean Young seems ready for new chances after No Way Out. She appeared to have everything planned out for some of the biggest roles and franchises. Batman in 1989 was among the first. Young was cast as Vicky Bale and took part in weeks of rehearsals and read-throughs according to various versions. Then the mishap occurred. According to reports, she fractured her arm, or, depending on who you ask, her collarbone, when she fell during pre-production horseback riding exercises. Kim Basinger took Sean Young's place due to the injury, and her chance to star in a big studio movie was quietly lost. She wasn't finished with Gotham, though. She was still involved when Batman Returns came along, and this time she had Catwoman as her target. She even arrived at the Warner Brothers lot wearing a homemade Catwoman costume, requesting to be seen by Tim Burton or a casting director, according to press reports and her own memories. According to some stories, she attempted to enter production offices without permission, while others claim she caught executives completely off surprise. Regardless of whether Burton actually hid beneath his desk, as some rumors claim, the incident swiftly entered Hollywood legend. And that was quite severe for Sean Young. To be safe, most performers would have sent over a headshot and let their agent make the decision. The part was lost on her. One of the decade's most memorable performances was given by Michelle Pfeiffer. Sean Young, however, remained active. She simply became much more difficult to cast. The Catwoman stunt became a standard in all discussions about her. It was when people began discussing her behavior rather than her performances that the label of difficult truly began to stick. Perhaps it was unfair. Perhaps it wasn't even true. But in Hollywood in the 1990s, it was frequently all that was needed to make a difference. In 1994, Ace Ventura: Pet Detective followed. Jim Carrey, at the height of his anarchy, a massive box office hit. Lieutenant Louis Einhorn, who is shown to be a man in disguise in the film's finale, was portrayed by Sean Young. And the way it's handled, well, I'm not sure. Some may argue that it hasn't held up over time. But I still find it funny. Young is the object of the joke rather than a character in it, and the movie aims for loud, crude chuckles. The response? Although the film was a financial success, Sean's stock did not rise in tandem. Actually, the reverse occurred. Meanwhile, the same story. The Catwoman suit, the unstable label, and director or producer anecdotes that portrayed her as difficult to work with continued coming up in the news. It was nasty at times and ambiguous at others. What I didn't know in my early career was very good self-preservation skills, Sean Young stated. I had absolutely no idea how to censor myself, and she eventually paid a price for her lack of self-censorship. At least when it came to big studio parts, the 2000s were quieter. Her surprise appearances included cameo spots on Reno 911, The Young and the Restless, and blink and you miss it roles in low-budget thrillers and quirky indies. Over time, her face had changed little, but the spark, that slightly unbalanced energy, remained. In 2011, Dr. Drew's Celebrity Rehab followed, and it was so difficult to watch. Despite the show's portrayal of her as occasionally diluted or disconnected from reality, if you look behind the sensationalism and editing, you'll see a woman attempting to regain her voice and understanding in a field that had sucked her up and left her behind. She had a brief yet eerie appearance in Jugface in 2013. There was work, but there was no massive Oscar campaign or magazine covers announcing a resurrection. And that alone said something for an actor like Sean Young, who had turned into a sort of cautionary tale for the industry. Her voice has a calm quality when you listen to her in interviews these days. She is a woman who has weathered the storm and emerged with some scars, to be sure, but also with a sense of humor that hasn't faded. We recall the parts such as Susan in No Way Out, Charney in Dune, and Rachel in Blade Runner. But we also recall the hypothetical scenarios. What if she had played Catwoman? What if she had been given more opportunities and room to develop? Sean Young has a tranquil life now, is married, has a child, and occasionally participates in Indio Festival circuit projects. Although her career has been turbulent, erratic, and occasionally harsh, we can hardly claim it has been dull. What a journey. Hopefully, she has found some tranquility away from the press and the industry. If you enjoy this type of information, please click like, subscribe, and comment below. I post 2 new videos every week. I sincerely appreciate you staying and watching these through to the very finish. As always, I'm forward to see everyone at the next one.